Thomas Jefferson said, "Freedom is lost from an uninterested, uninformed, and uninvolved people." History shows that when truth is at the mercy of the government and a complicit media, our freedom is vulnerable. The greatest weapon against lies and distortion is an informed citizenry. The truth cannot defend itself. It needs freedom-loving patriots with an arsenal of knowledge at hand. So thank you for being here tonight. You are those who are interested, informed, and involved, the people who will make the difference. We are honored tonight to be hosting Michael Ledeen, a renowned expert on Iran and in foreign affairs. Given the events of the last couple of weeks, Dr. Ledeen's presentation could not be timelier. And speaking of those who pique our interest, who inform and involve people, we are also honored tonight to have Roger L. who will be introducing his friend and our speaker. Roger L. Simon is a founder and until recently the CEO of PJ Media. During Roger's tenure as CEO, PJ Media became one of the most significant and prominent internet media sites. An award-winning Academy Award-nominated screenwriter, Roger will be devoting his time and efforts to his creative writing. The Party Line, a 2-act play with his wife, Longin, was just published by Criterion Books in November 2012. He also wrote a story for the 2011 movie, A Better Life. I personally read The Party Line, and I recommend it highly. We have it available tonight for purchase and signing by Roger. Dr. Ledeen's newest book, Virgil's Golden Egg, will also be available for purchase and signing following the presentation, and also right now. Buy a copy of each for yourself, and another copy as a gift to your neighborhood school. You will be doing the world a big favor. Those of us here today understand this, and it is with great pleasure I introduce Roger L. Simon.
I look around this audience, I see a lot of familiar faces from events. I wish I didn't. What I mean is no offense to anybody in the room, of course. What I mean is we need new faces. We need more faces. And right now, I believe we, ironically, are at a teachable moment. Because of Boston, because of Dr. Dosnell, a lot of things that are happening in the last few days. It's a time for us to bite the bullet and talk to our liberal friends and relatives, the ones who don't have to talk to us anymore. Those of them who read my book, Blacklisting Myself, then changed as Turning Right at Hollywood and Vine, know that I've lived that. But I believe, without knowing a lot of you in this room, but knowing some of you, that you've all lived it. And that we since September 11, 2001, have lived in a society where families and friends are fractured in ways we never would have dreamed of it. And the reason back in the day when Michael was first involved, and I and Glenn Reynolds and all those people who started Pajamas Media, now PG Media, why we started it was to reach out and try to make communications. And it's become successful, and it gets a lot of traffic on the internet. But regrettably, a lot of that traffic is the people in this room, not just in this room, but in many rooms across the globe, because we get millions of people, but they were preaching a lot to the choir. And we're at a time right now when we should try not to do that. I mean, we got to do that anyway, but we should try to reach out to the other side and try to make them. There's a famous line by Joseph Conrad about why he wrote novels. It's to make men see. And it's our mission to make people see. And I think one of the great things about what Doris has done is providing all of you in the audience and other audiences like this the opportunity to talk to people who can help make people see, and then it's up to you to do it. I mean, when we were doing PJ Media, the meetings that I had before I ankled, as we say, my job as CEO, was I regarded it as we're giving people fodder to talk about at the water cooler. Because we have a certain audience, which is some of the audiences here right this minute, and those people already agree with us to a large degree. I imagine Michael will tell you stuff, because I know Michael, that you never dreamed you'd know. On the other hand, you're not going to disagree with him because it's Michael and you trust him. But what we need is that information, to convey that information to the other side and try to make them see. This is really hard, because I know from my own experience, I was for 30, look, you're looking at a guy who was friends with Abby Hoffman. You can read about it in my books. I've subscribed to it. You know, I wrote The Big Fix, which was the most famous movie on the left at a certain point. So it's not easy. I don't think I have to convince that anybody yet. Anyway, one other thing before I get into introducing Michael, because this is the kind of audience it is. I just got email, because even though I've left being head of PJ Media, I get the emails from Ron Radosh, who's someone that maybe, if you don't know him, you better know him. Anyway, he wrote something I think I want to share with this audience. I'll do it right now. As for what appears to be Tamerlan Tsarnaev's Amazon wish list page, this hasn't yet appeared in the media and may never, is a weird jumble of self-help books, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, covert operations manuals, the ID forger, homemade birth certificates, and other documents explained, Chechen history books, Allah's Mountains, The Battle for Chechnya, new edition. I wonder what the old edition's like. Mafia books, Nick Pileggi's Wise Guy, and books about the Roman Empire, the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. That's us, folks. And there is Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy, as pretty highbrow for this guy, a staple of college curriculums that addresses ideas of good and evil and free will, and Snatch, the inside story of making the smash hit of the movie starring Brad Pitt. Explain that one to me. Ron Radosh writes, did Tamerlane's Harbo Macho dreams of being an action hero or a mafia operative? Did he want to read Boethius to grapple with deep existential thoughts? I doubt it. Anyway, one other quick thing, and that is, how is it that Michael Ledeen is now one of my 2 or 3 best friends in the whole world, and I didn't know this man from Adam in the year 2003, except that I knew who he was, because I said, oh, Michael Ledeen, Iran-Contra, ooh, bad, strange, boo. Then I had started blogging in 2003 because, 2011 did something to the whole left-wing me. I thought, wait a minute, why are these guys doing this to the United States of America? It's not that bad a place. So I started writing about this, and lo and behold, this website that I had, which I had started to promote a novel I had just written, that the publisher all of a sudden wasn't that interested in because it wasn't so left-wing anymore. And lots of people started logging out of the website. No one read the novel, but everyone logged on the website. And the reason was that a lot of people were going through the transition back then in 2003 from 2011. They certainly were waking up. Now, what's interesting is a lot of those people who woke up in 2001 and 2 and 3 stopped waking up and went back to their old ways. But at that point, one of the people who suddenly approached me, having read my website, was this gentleman back in the room. And I'm going, Michael Ledeen. And then, all of a sudden, I started writing back and forth with him, and I discovered something interesting. That the guy who was supposedly the nefarious neocon, who was, the enemy of everything I had considered to be good and right, turned out to be one of the most interesting, positive, witty, extraordinary human beings I ever met. And I really mean that. You can tell that. He's staying in my house tonight, and not everybody does. not only that, you can learn amazing things from Michael, because besides being one of the great political thinkers of our time, which I think people know this, he knows lots about Italian food, having lived there a long time, and bridge and all these other things that make a human being human. And I'm going to get off here because you guys are here to hear Michael. So I give you, but I'm going to say one last thing. This play I wrote with my wife that Doris was so kind to mention, which is for sale out there, called The Party Line. I've written lots of Hollywood movies that many of you may have seen, but this is better stuff. But the reason it is not out there as much is because thematically it's on our side. And years ago, I wrote a book called Blacklisting Myself. When I wrote Blacklisting Myself, I was really ignorant. I thought, they're not going to really blacklist me. Yes, they do. And this play is going to be read and probably produced by the Skylight Theater in Los Angeles later in June. And I hope all you come to see it. It's about, in part, Walter Duranty. I don't know if you know who he is. If you do know who he is, you'll find it really interesting. But for those who don't, Walter Duranty was the Moscow correspondent for the New York Times in the 1920s and 30s, who deliberately lied about Stalin's mass murder of the Ukrainians, and for his lies and other things, won the Pulitzer Prize. He's sort of the forerunner of all the mainstream media people who are lying to us today, and that's why we wrote about it. And now I give you Michael Ledeen.
Well, you need to know that along with the many other changes that Roger went through, he became a dog person. And he'd never been a dog person. All of a sudden, he became a dog person. And we are very much dog people. And so part of the friendship, the basis of the friendship between the Ledeens and the Simons is dogs. And we had, oddly, it's just one of those things, the way the universe works. Both of us used to have big dogs. The Simons had greyhounds, and we had Airedales. And after a while, the greyhounds and the Airedales died off, and the Simons now have a miniature schnauzer named Henry, and we have a miniature poodle named Watson. So go figure. It's the way the universe works. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm really happy to be here. Los Angeles always shocks people when I say this, but I was born in Los Angeles. I mean, Los Angeles is my hometown. Los Angeles is where my mother always wanted to live, and she was all her life, because they never did live in Los Angeles except a year here and a year there. Anyway, I went to Pomona College. Graduated, went off to the University of Wisconsin, never really came back, but I still have lots of family. I mean, I've spent my whole day here running around with family. So thanks for having me back. It's always nice to be back, and it's always reassuring to me to see that there's still traffic in Los Angeles, and there's still cars in Los Angeles, and all those things that make it what it is are still here. I'm going to talk to you, we're going to talk, because I'm going to stand here and talk to you for a while, and then I'm going to sit down and we'll talk. I'm going to talk about the real war, because we read a lot about North Korea and Iran and Syria and various other things, China, Russia. And in a lot of the columns, a lot of the deep thinkers always say, careful, because if we do this, it might lead to war. We might be in war. And what I've been writing for years, and I mean, it seems obvious to me if you just look at it, is the war is on. The war is on. They're waging war against us right now. I'm a Marine dad. We have 2 Marine officers. One served twice in Iraq, one served a tour in Afghanistan. And so we're now a military family, and we know lots of other military families, and you would be astonished at who are military families in Washington. A lot of famous people. They don't talk about it. but have kids in the military, and a lot of them are Marines. It's quite something. In any case, if you talk to military families, or particularly to men and women in uniform, they will tell you that they are at war. I mean, they're fighting every day, and Americans are being killed every day by a network of countries who are cooperating with each other and working very hard with one another with the objective of destroying the United States. And it's quite explicit. They don't make any pretense that they're doing anything else. They have declared war against us. They are waging war against us. We are not fighting back. We are playing defense. And in many cases, especially in recent years, we're running away. So during the Iraq War, I said over and over again, poor Iraq will never have decent security so long as those people are in power in Iran, because they can't permit it. They have to come after Iraq. They have to try to dominate Iraq, and they have to try to drive us out of Iraq. Well, as it turned out, we won the war in Iraq. One of the things we're not permitted to say. We defeated al-Qaeda, Syria, and Iran in Iraq. And everybody in the Middle East knew that. Everybody saw it, and you can prove it, because towards the end of the war in Iraq, and immediately following the end of the war in Iraq, al-Qaeda recruitment was way down, because it's one thing to sign up for an al-Qaeda that's pounding its chest and saying, we're winning, and Allah blesses us. And I'm going to come back to this Allah blesses us business, because it's very important. And so they want to sign up because they get to decapitate an infidel or an apostate, or they get to blow up Americans or Iraqis or British or any of the others who volunteer to work with us. But it's quite another thing when the people being killed are themselves. And never mind all this talk about we love death more than you love life. It's not true. There are some people who can be gulled into blowing themselves up, but I spent an awful lot of time on Iran, and I will tell you, you cannot find an Iranian who blows himself up. Iranians don't blow themselves up. Iranians convince, as they put it, stupid Arabs to blow themselves up. And the Iranians get a double thrill from that. On the one hand, they're killing us, and on the other hand, they've convinced, as they put it, some stupid Arab to blow himself up. So it's a twofer, right? They get stupid Arab plus a certain number of infidels and so forth. So al-Qaeda recruitment was way down, and it was at that moment that we decided to exit Iraq. So we ran away, and we left Iraq wide open, permitting those people whom we had defeated to turn around and start pounding their chests again and say, you see, we won. We drove them out. They're running away. They're going back home to America, and Iraq is now ours. And so they started pouring back into Iraq and blowing people up and doing all the things that we had stopped them from doing and we had driven them out. We have a son that we're about to do the same thing in Afghanistan. Our youngest son was 7+ months in Afghanistan. He was in a place called Forward Operating Base Delhi, D-E-L-H-I. It's a famous base in Helmand province because that's where Prince William of the British royal family served. He was there, he fought there, and he fought with the British Marines alongside British Marines who are really good. They're good fighters, and the British like to fight. They were driven out of Forward Operating Base Delhi because it was too bloody, it was too terrible, they were losing too many people, and so out they went. They were replaced by United States Marines. And Daniel, our son, was in the 3rd Battalion in after Prince William. So and Marines deploy 7 months at a time. So 7 months, 1 battalion in, a lot of casualties. Replaced by another battalion, 7 months, not so many casualties. Then came Daniel's battalion, 3-3. They had, in 7 months plus, 0 casualties. And the infantry people walked through the streets of Helmand province and said to the people, Where are the Taliban? I mean, we came here, we were promised Taliban. And we're looking for them, and we're here, and we're available. And if you see any of them, would you please tell them, here we are, here's where our tents are, you know, please come. We'd like to meet them. And there weren't any, all right? Now, you will read that Afghanistan is a terrible, bloody place, and it's true. But there's huge variation over that area. And it is a place where, if one wanted to win, one would win. One could win. We could win. It's a matter of will. And the same thing applies to this broader war. And our enemies in the broader war, you all know who they are. North Korea, Iran, Syria, half of Saudi Arabia, at least, maybe more. Lots of funny South American countries, China, Russia, and then Venezuela, Bolivia, Ecuador, so forth, Nicaragua. I'm sorry to say, because they make very good cigars, and it really pains me that they're still anti-American after all this, when they make all this money out of selling their terrific cigars in the United States. So that's a global network. We're involved in a global war. There is no way out of this war. We can win or we can lose, but we can't get out of it. So no matter how many places we may bail out of, Iraq yesterday, Afghanistan today, who knows where tomorrow, they will keep coming after us. And they will keep coming after us until they have either defeated us or we have defeated them. There is no possible outcome. You can't talk them out of it. They have very strong convictions about the urgent necessity they have of destroying the United States. Now notice this global network, which is allied against us, is not all one thing. It's a combination of things. And the two big things of which it is a combination are radical Muslims and radical leftists. And they will work together. They're working intimately together. North Korea is not a Muslim country. Venezuela is not a Muslim country. And yet, Shiite mosques are cropping up all over Venezuela today. That is not traditional in that part of the world. Why is that? Look at North Korea. North Korea and Iran are fused at the navel when it comes to developing nuclear weapons and missiles. One country tests missiles, the other country tests bombs. But they're working in tandem in those things. There's Iranians present at North Korean tests, and there's North Korean present at Iranian tests and sites. Remember the Syrian nuclear reactor that the Israelis blew up? Where did all that stuff come from? It came from North Korea. I mean, I remember when poor George W. Bush gave his speech about the axis of evil. The axis of evil was, remember, Iran, Iraq, and North Korea. And most of my friends in Washington said, what's North Korea doing in there? Is it in there for ethnic balance? I mean, what is it? What's it doing? And the answer is, it was real. He was right. They work together, and it's much bigger than that. And I once I got thrown off of Chris Matthews' television program because one night I was on, and he said, you know, what is this axis of evil business? There's no Syria. And so I said, well, you're right, there's no Syria. And the Syrians were very offended, and they protested. And they said, how come we're left out of the axis of evil? And the White House apologized to the Assad family and promised that next time there was an axis of evil event, Syria would be included. And Matthews looked at me, didn't know what to do, because it wasn't used to this kind of answer and so on. And then finally it dawned on him that it was a joke, and he laughed and he said, aha, very funny. And then he said, you know, we have a commercial, and the commercial came out, and he looked at me and he said, don't ever do that. Don't do that. Right? Because they don't have a big sense of humor. So I'm going to play a video for you, an 8 or 9. Everybody likes videos nowadays, so I'm trying to accommodate to modern demands. This video is produced by Memory, which you all know, and it's a collection of clips from Iranian television. All right, so this is what the regime in Iran shows Iranian citizens. And so watch it carefully, and then I'm going to pick up on a couple of things in this video and take off after that. And keep in mind that what we're looking for is what binds together radical leftists and radical Muslims. Okay, hit it. That's their message to their own people. So I always like to say to groups, okay, that scene, death to America, everybody's chanting death to America, and so on. I like to ask people, what do you think they mean? What is that all about? Is that some kind of local ritual? Some kind of street dance or celebration or something? And the answer, of course, is no, they mean it. That's exactly what they want. It's what they intend, it's what they're working for, and they believe that they can do it. And we've seen, again, never mind tracking down, there was an event in Canada a couple of days ago where 2 men were arrested plotting to blow up a train up in Toronto, Montreal. And the Mounties, who are the Canadian intelligence organization, announced that these guys had been trained by al-Qaeda people in Iran. But they said, we don't have any reason to think that this operation had the approval of the Iranian government. And you will find it's just amazing how often lines like this get tacked on by intelligence agencies. Because, all right, they have no reason to believe it. But on the other hand, is it then credible to assume that the Iranian regime is permitting al-Qaeda to operate freely in their country and training terrorists who then get sent to Canada to blow up a train? Do you have any reason to believe that? But no one ever asked them that at the press conferences. People don't say, well, all right, you have no reason. It means you have no evidence. You have no written document that shows that an Iranian official instructed these people, okay, now go to Canada and blow up that train. Do you have any evidence that it didn't happen? Or what is al-Qaeda doing? But I mean, all the time people keep giving us stories about how al-Qaeda is now out of Iran, or previously there were stories about how al-Qaeda was under arrest in Iran, as if the relationship between Iran and al-Qaeda were always hostile. But it isn't. The bulk of al-Qaeda, following our attack against Afghanistan in 2001 and 2002, they went to Iran. And we know that a great number of bin Laden's family lived in Iran for a long time, and for all we know, still live in Iran. And yet, we are now at, what is it, 5th or 6th American president who's trying to make a deal with Iran, who thinks somehow we can negotiate away these things. Well, the Iranians believe in death to America. They don't want to make a deal with us. They want to put their feet on our necks. That's what they want. They want us dead or dominated, and they're working for it. All the time, they're forever working for it. So if you watch the coverage, I haven't had a chance to watch the coverage very carefully post-Boston, but you can be positive that large numbers of people in the American government and in the media, because they work together on these things, will be desperately trying to show that there was no foreign involvement in Boston, that these guys were domestic, they are self-made terrorists, they are lone wolf terrorists, all these words that get used all the time. And yet, they're happy to say that they got the idea and they got some of the information and so on from watching internet, jihadi internet. Well, but the minute you go out, you're on jihadi internet and you're watching Iranian or Saudi or Al-Qaeda or Salafist indoctrination on internet, which explains to you, here's the way you make a kind of bomb that you can put in a backpack and carry off, and here's how you explode it, and here's how you link it with a cell telephone, and here's how you can do it with batteries and timers and so on, all those things. You're not exactly a lone wolf anymore because you're participating, you become part of a big international network which is training, passing on information like this all over the world. And I think once you look at it that way and you realize that they are in contact, no longer in our world do you have to get on an airplane and fly to some place and sit at the feet of some terrorist instructor. You can just go online and you'll learn it online and you can communicate with them online. And as you may know, there's all kinds of really weird sites online where people of this ilk congregate and compare notes and exchange experiences and plan for the next event. A lot of people that the FBI rounds up and arrests in the United States get caught that way because they get caught online doing all this preparation and planning and so forth. So I am very there probably are some really lone wolf terrorists around, but they're very rare. For the most part, terrorism functions as well as it does because of international support, of state support from foreign countries. There are a lot of things that big-time terrorists need. Al-Qaeda could not exist without state support. Hezbollah could not exist without state support. Hezbollah is an arm of the government of Iran. They do not do anything. There is no major operation undertaken by Hezbollah without formal Iranian approval or without formal instructions from Tehran. It doesn't happen. They cannot do it. And if you look at what's going on in the Middle East right now in this context, you will see why Iran is so desperate to preserve Assad in Syria. Because if Assad falls in Syria, what happens to Hezbollah? Where does Hezbollah go? Hezbollah will then be deprived of its home base, where it trains, where it feeds, where it operates, where it conducts its operations, where its leaders are, and so forth. It's very hard to find another place which can serve as a substitute for the kind of support that they have had from Syria all these years. And notice what happens to the rest of the network that now we talked about. Chavez, when he was still alive, was one of the most ardent defenders of Assad and sent money to Assad and supported Assad. The Russians, ditto. The two countries that are providing the bulk of the materiel, the money, the tactics, and so forth to Assad are Russia and Iran, with Venezuela closely behind. And the Chinese have sent people to Damascus to instruct the Syrians in how to manage control over internet communications and intercept what the opposition are saying to one another and all of that. So you can't understand the world by looking at these issues country by country anymore. It's a global war. You have to look at it globally, and you always have to look at the network. And if we're going to survive this thing, we're going to have to defeat that. That's the network we've got to go after. Now, as it happens, we have every reason to think that we can do that. And we can do it, for the most part, without sending Marines into Helmand Province. For the most part, it's not necessary. Remember, after all, we brought down the Soviet Empire basically without firing a shot. It was all done with money and words. And we supported the subversive forces inside the Soviet Empire who were willing to take risks to fight against the Kremlin. Now, inside that world, and I was in the Reagan administration, and And we did that. Inside that world, maybe you could get up to 5 or 10% of the population that was willing to take really big risks to bring an end to the communist empire. In Iran today, and Iran is the keystone of this international structure, in Iran today you've got, who knows, 70, 80, 90% of the people hate the regime, say so, prove it on every available occasion. Take to the streets, blow up pipelines, sabotage refineries, assassinate revolutionary guards. All of this goes on all the time. So it should be much easier to have regime change in Iran than it was in Moscow. Incomparably easier and much less expensive. But paradoxically, all the people who say don't meddle with Iran and the arguments they introduce about don't challenge the regime, don't support the opposition, are exactly what they said back when about the Soviet Union. They all came to us and said, what are you, crazy? And a lot of these people were Jews. And what got them upset was when we started supporting Jewish dissidents, the Sharanskys and so forth. And they said, for God's sake, don't get the Russians angry. Because if you push the Russians back up against the wall, they'll lash out and they'll make things worse for our people, not better. They'll make things worse. You have to do these things quietly and privately and not have them out on the front pages of all. Well, Reagan was smart enough to realize that that was wrong. And he came out and gave the evil empire speech. And he made sure that every time his Secretary of State went to an international meeting at which some Soviet was present, his Secretary of State, his Secretary of Defense, his UN ambassador, whoever it was, would read a list of political prisoners and say, let these people out. These people don't belong in your jails. And it was a plenty long list, and they hated it. The Russians just hated it. As the Iranians hate it. Everybody hates it. They hate being called out like that. Those statements, those public assaults against the legitimacy of those regimes are enormously important and enormously powerful. Remember when the Iranians demonstrated in the streets, millions of them, in 2009, 2010, they were carrying big signs and saying, Obama, where are you? They weren't waiting for American planes to fly over Iran and bomb something. They were waiting for the President of the United States to say, we stand with the people of Iran. We want a free Iran. We don't like this regime. This regime kills Americans every day, kills Iranians every day. We want it. Its time is over. It's time for it to pass. We want a free country. We will support the Iranian opposition. That's what they wanted. They didn't want us to march in. They didn't expect us to march in. Nobody thinks that Obama's going to send an army into Iran. What they want is for the United States to lend its moral strength and its political strength to the Iranian people who are ready to go. But they don't believe they can do it all by themselves. And to date, not a single Western country has endorsed the idea of free Iran. Instead, we hear all these statements, and we come back to this paradox. The famous Sarkozy option, Iran with the bomb or bomb Iran. And that's the way they talk all the time. All these so-called realists, for example, in foreign policy, they always say, well, we better make a deal over the nukes with the Iranians because otherwise we're going to be drawn into war with them. We're going to have to attack them. Well, the war's on. They're already attacking us. And if you don't have a way to win this thing without violence, then you're going to use violence. And so we're going to end up bombing Iran, which is stupid and morally suspect and unnecessary. And all these people talking about military options. What military option? Right? It's not easy. It's a big country. It's 75 million people. We're not talking about Iraq. Iraq was 20 million people. Syria's 12 or 13. Iran is 75 million people. Lots of money. Sanctions or no sanctions. They move plenty of oil around the world. Plenty of gas around the world. And they have neighbors with money who are happy to buy it. Sanctions or no sanctions. So it's not an easy task if what you want to do is frontally attack Iran. What's easy is to bring it down from inside, but by supporting their own people, because they're the ones who want, more than anybody else, an end to this regime. So that's the right strategy for us. It's the right strategy for us throughout. I was very disappointed that we weren't more active in opposing the successor to Chavez in these recent presidential elections in Venezuela, because that's a big deal. If we could have pro-Western governments, freely elected governments who want to be on good terms with the Western world, with us, with the Brits, with the French, and so forth, the whole world would change overnight. For one thing, the support for terrorism would dry up. The terrorist universe has been through this once before. When the Soviet Empire fell, terrorism shrunk because they weren't getting the money, they weren't getting the weapons. There's a lot of things that terrorists need that can only come from a state. It's not so easy to be a good terrorist. Terrorists have to travel internationally. They need good phony passports. Good phony passports are hard to come by. Governments produce them. Even with our great computers and laser printers now, it's still very hard to produce a credible phony passport that will make it through security points in the Western world. So they need those things. Governments can provide them. Intelligence services of hostile governments do those things routinely. But even so, you see, they have to steal passports from dead people in foreign countries and invent names of people in foreign countries and so forth. It's normal. So you bring down Iran and Venezuela, and you get pro-American governments in those countries. And if you brought down the regime in Iran, the odds are very long that you would get a pro-American, pro-Western regime in Iran today. All of a sudden, where does Hezbollah go? The Revolutionary Guards, Foreign Legion, the so-called Quds Force, where does it go? It's gone, because the opposition in Iran is adamant that they don't want to support terrorism overseas. They said, why are we spending, Iranian people are starving to death. Why are we spending all this money on terrorism? And what we want is to be on good terms with the Americans. We don't want to have our people killing Americans all the time. So that's the world we're in. That's the war we're in. It's not so hard. We have every opportunity. I'm a born optimist, as Roger will tell you. And my own life has shown that more often than not, optimism is justified. You can do it. We can win. We have an amazing capacity in this country. Nobody thought, when Reagan was elected president and we went into the government, everybody thought we were nuts because they said, right, I'm a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. To this day, I'm not a Republican. And a lot of friends of mine, Richard Pearl, Gene Kirkpatrick, so forth, we went in and people said, why are you going into the government of this person? And we said, because we want to bring down the Soviet Empire. And they all laughed. And they said, what are you, crazy? That's insane. You're not going to bring down the Soviet Empire. And it wasn't just people, political people or intellectuals or journalists. It was CIA. I mean, you go back and read what CIA said about the Soviet Union as of 2 months before it fell, and you won't believe it. And they said, you know, Gorbachev was solid, he was firmly in control, the economy was growing, the whole thing was a great success, the people loved him, they supported him. East Germany was the world's 7th greatest industrial power, everything was going fine there. I mean, just total nonsense. And nobody believed that it was possible to bring down the Soviet Union without war. Just as people today say you can't bring down Iran without war. You're going to have to go to war to bring down Iran, and nobody wants war. But it's not true. They were wrong then, and they're wrong now. If you look at what they've been saying about revolutionary forces in Iran, and I remind you that Iran in the 20th century had 3 revolutions. It's a country that knows from revolution. They know how to do it, and they're good at it. And some of those revolutions were great. I mean, the last one was terrible. It's the one that brought those lunatics to power. But they've had plenty of good revolutions, and they have a long tradition of self-government, and they are a different kind of Muslim. If if Iran had free elections tomorrow, I promise you that no one with a turban would be elected to anything. And you would probably see the greatest Zoroastrian revival in history. Even though theoretically you can't convert to Zoroastrianism, but it's going on. Even so, it's one of those many things in life that cannot be but is. And so you have lots of, those ceremonies that you've seen on television of people during Persian New Year jumping through fires, those are Zoroastrian festivals. Those are Zoroastrian rituals. And they're one of the many ways that the Iranians have found to demonstrate their contempt for the regime, because just lighting those fires is illegal, never mind jumping through them. That's all banned in Iran. So if we have, this whole world is tailor-made for us. Even now, even after everything that's gone wrong. Because what do we want? We want to be in a position of saying to the people of the world, whether it's the Middle East or South America or Asia and so forth, we have to say, look, our enemies, the people who say that we're part of the dead or dying past, and America's role in the world is finished, and come with us and we'll bury the Americans together. What do they have to offer? The radical left has tried their model over and over again, and it has failed every time, catastrophically. And the radical Muslims have tried two big experiments. They have a Sunni version, and they have a Shiite version. They have the Shiite version in Iran, and they have a Sunni version in places like Saudi Arabia and today in Egypt with the Muslim Brotherhood and so forth. How does that look to you today? Do you want to be the new Egypt? Egypt's about to die. Egypt, if you read PJ Media and you read David Goldman and looking at the numbers, the numbers on Egypt, they're dead. They're finished. They can't feed their people. They don't have enough foreign currency to buy enough food to feed the people for the next year or two. I mean, it is a disaster. So we want to be in a position of addressing the people of the world and say, our enemies have tried it, and they've lost. And they've lost every time, and they lose for the most horrible of all reasons from their standpoint, which is their own people turn against them. Right? There's now demonstrations all over Egypt against the Muslim Brotherhood because it turns out that the Brotherhood doesn't know how to deal with these problems. They can't deal with those problems. Of course, nobody can. Moses couldn't. Nobody can solve the problems that Egypt has today. But that's what we want to say. And we want to say to them another thing. The reason this alliance between the radical left and radical Islam seems on the face of it to be impossible. Because the left is secular, super secular, and is anti-religious. And the religious fanatics are violently anti-Marxist and anti-communist, and the secular people by them are considered to be infidels. So how does it work out that they can have this working alliance together? And the answer is because they are both frightened, terribly frightened, at the success of America, particularly in the free world in general. Because what they know is that their people look at us and they say, by and large, we would rather live like that than the way we are living today. And so they must destroy us. They have to, because it's not our policies that threatens them. All these people who say, well, you know, Zionism, pro-Israel, all of this stuff, it has nothing to do with anything. They hate us not because of what we do, but because of what we are. They hate us because our existence threatens their legitimacy. Look at the movements of people. Where do they go? Do people go from the United States to Pakistan? Is there a huge migration coming from Chechnya, right? Going to Chechnya or coming from Chechnya, right? These Chechens went to Boston. How many people went from Boston to Chechnya, right? I mean, you don't have to think deeply. It's quite obvious what's going on. So they're drawn to the necessity of having to confront us and try to destroy us, because otherwise their people will bring them down. And they know that. It's only a matter of time. Ergo, we should say that, and we should bring them down, because we have all the weapons, and our big weapons are political. Yes, we have the best military, and we have the best military weapons, and those are great because they will prevent, when push comes to shove, probably most of these characters from lashing out at us militarily when their moment of destiny comes, as happened with the Soviets. The Soviets knew they had no chance to win a war against us, and so when their system went into crisis, they went quietly. I don't know if the Iranians will go so quietly. We'll see, but I will say, what we do know is that they were ready to go in 2009. They were ready to leave. And if we had supported the opposition in 2009, 2010, odds are we could have gotten right then and there a peaceful transition. They may have advanced too far now on their military development, and they may feel very feisty. And I'm sure somebody will ask me about Iranian nukes, so I will tell you right now, I don't know. I don't know if they have one. On the one hand, it seems to me amazing that they don't have one if they don't have one. On the other hand, if they do have one, it seems amazing to me that they haven't brandished it at us, because their whole program to build nukes was as a protection against us. They think that if they had nukes, we wouldn't dare do anything to them. So I don't know how far along they are with having effective weapons and being ready to use them against us and being prepared to bring down the whole thing. I don't know how big and how strong their Samson complex is, but what I do know is that we have every opportunity and every reason to try to change the world by bringing them down and doing the same thing in Venezuela. And then we will suddenly, things will look different. Terrorism will be diminished. The Russians will have less to work with, so they won't cause quite as much trouble as they're causing right now. I mean, it's amazing to me that we haven't responded to this. And I keep going around Washington saying to members of Congress and people in government, you know, these people kill Americans every day. And they all nod. Everybody knows it. I say, so why aren't you doing anything about it? Why have we not responded? It's been going on since 1979. It's a long time. It's a whole series of presidents. It's Republicans and Democrats. It's lefties and righties. It's not just Obama. Yes, Obama's worse than most. But Obama, in terms of dealing with Iran, is just like the rest of them. Every American president, from Carter to Obama, has come to believe that he could make a deal with Iran. All of them. The only difference is that that Obama came in already believing it, whereas the others, it took them a bit of time to get to the point where they believed it, or they accepted it, or they were willing to try it. I'll tell you one anecdote, and then I'll stop and we can talk. Poor George W. Bush. I mean, my heart really goes out to him, because he did not know how to defend himself or explain what he was up to or why he was doing what he was doing. I mean, it was just painful. It was painful to watch. But George W. Bush approved secret negotiations with Iran, which he and Condoleezza Rice and the top people at the State Department firmly believed had succeeded. They thought that they had reached an agreement, a grand bargain with Iran in 2006. And in September of 2006, the deal was that Rice and the top guy in the State Department, Nicholas Burns, would go to New York, to the United Nations, and wait for the arrival of Ali Larijani, who was every Westerner's favorite Iranian, speaks perfect English, very nice, very elegant, and so forth. And he would fly from Tehran to New York. They would meet at the UN. He would say, Iran's going to stop uranium enrichment. Rice and Burns would say, we're lifting sanctions. And they would sign, and there'd be a party. and everybody would celebrate. Right? All of this is documented, by the way. You can find it online, I think, still. The BBC did a 3-hour documentary on this. Right? And you've got Nicholas Burns himself on camera confirming it all. Right? So it's not some journalistic fantasy. It's documented. Right? So what happened? So Burns and Rice go to New York, and we've got satellites and whatnot watching the runway in Tehran for Larijani's planes to take off, and it never took off. And he never showed up, and he never came, and that was that. And that is pretty much the history of American-Iranian secret negotiations, which have been going on forever. They've been going on since Jimmy Carter. And so when you read in the paper, if only the United States would talk directly, one-on-one with Iran, you know, things might be different. But we've been talking directly, one-on-one with Iran all these years. It's never stopped. There was no president, we've had no president who failed to do that. Everyone has done it, and everyone has failed, right? So you all know Einstein's definition of insanity. There it is. Thanks very much. I'll take questions.
There's a bit of a confusion that I have. It's going to be a question between, and a mixed message that you sent, whether you're aware of it or not, by showing that film, which to me is very reminiscent, both visually and spiritually, of the Nazi movement. Sounded like it, spirited like that. And yet you say, both at the same time you're saying we're at a war already, and yet the burden of the message is that we can be rational with these people and deal with them and continue to get them to be delegitimized by their own people. That film makes me realize that it's impossible. Very much, if you've read The Garden of the Beasts by Eric Larson, very much like that. The more we, it seems to me that the more we experience this attrition in our own image, the less agreeable will they be to anything and the less to our power. Question is, what was the point of the film?
Point of the film was to show that they're serious about wanting to destroy us, and that chances of reaching a negotiated settlement or a reasonable agreement with that regime are very small, because they hate us and they really do want to kill us. And when they say death to America, that's what they mean. When I say that I think our chances are very good about destroying that regime, I'm talking about destroying the regime, not about dealing with them. I don't want to deal with them. You destroy them because their own people have become alienated, and because their own people hate that regime. Their people are suffering under that regime, and they no longer believe. It's been a long time. You know, you compare it with Hitler. I'm a student of fascism, right? Hitler comes in 1932-33, and he goes out in 1945. So we're talking about 12 years. These guys have been there now 34, 35 years, and they have failed. Nobody wants to be the new Iran. Look at the Iranian economy. Look at the level of poverty. Look at the runaway inflation. Look at the people who long since have stopped buying chicken and lamb and so forth, and they're now reduced to stuffing themselves on bread and rice and so forth. And that's coming into short supply. Otherwise, you wouldn't find millions of people in the streets of the country protesting against the regime. You never had that. Hitler never faced anything like that. Mussolini never faced anything like that. But the mullahs do. And they are actively terrified of their own people, and you can see it in their behavior. And I think that's our greatest weapon.
I have a question. I lived under communism for a long time, and I have seen that in the face of total terror, it's very difficult or nearly impossible to talk to the population and cause them to rise up against even 10% of the overall population who have the weapons and the will to use it. What makes you think that Iran will not be able to suppress whatever we are trying to do to have the majority of the population rise up against the minority which has all the weapons?
For two reasons. One is that Iran is a revolutionary country and did it already 3 times in the last 100 years. So it's part of the Iranian tradition. It's built into Iranian political behavior. It's not unusual. And secondly, precisely because in those communist societies, which had terrific instruments of repression and terror, KGB was not any less vicious and effective than the Revolutionary Guards and the Basij in Iran today, and yet down it came. It did come down, and it came down with only a small portion of the population operating against it. That's what gives me hope. And so I think that if we operate along the same lines as we did, look, Soviet Empire was always a failure. All it ever did was fail. They maintained themselves in power because of terror and because of a supine population and because the Western world very rarely tried to challenge it. And when they did try to challenge it, it was ineffective and it was the wrong kind of approach and so on. Reagan brought down the Soviet Union in what, 10 years? Went from way behind where you had an exploding Soviet presence in the world, very aggressive foreign policy, moving into Afghanistan, supporting terrorism all over Western Europe, you know, thumping their chests all the time, trying to stop Europe from adopting cruise missiles in the face of Soviet SS-20s, all these things. And that just changed from night to day in a very few years. And I think that there's a tendency for us to forget how the world changes when America leads. Now, the problem, of course, is that we now have a president who doesn't want America to lead. And the really dangerous thing about this moment, to me, the most dangerous thing about this moment, is that this is the first American president that I have ever seen who basically doesn't like America. He doesn't like America. He thinks that we are responsible for most of these problems. He thinks that Iran's hatred of America is justified, and it's justified by past American actions, which he doesn't know very much about and doesn't understand very well at all. But that's the way he looks at the world. For him, the world is a world in which the best thing that you can do to bring about a peaceful, progressive world is to rein in the United States, is to restrain the United States. So when he tosses out these euphemisms like lead from behind and so forth, which I call leading with our behind, that's what he's got in mind, and that's what's so scary. But of course, we had a similar president with Carter, and Reagan succeeded Carter. So you never know. And in any case, there's no option. You have to keep fighting. We have to keep fighting for this, and we must urgently support rational candidates for the House of Representatives in the next congressional election, because if the Democrats take over the House of Representatives, it's Jenny bar the door, because they will then control everything for at least 2 years, and you can do an awful lot of damage in 2 years. So it must work frightfully hard for good candidates in the House of Representatives, and why not the Senate? I mean, an awful lot of Democratic senators are cashing out right now because they know, they know how bad it is, and we're living in an extremely explosive world. Terrible things can happen from one day to the next, just waiting for things to happen. I mean, I tell you, every day when I drive home from downtown Washington, I say, well, that was a good day. They didn't blow us up today. But it's only a matter of time before they blow us up in Washington. They're going to try. They were going to do it. They hired these narcotics people to assassinate the Saudi ambassador in Washington when he was at a restaurant. Right? Would have killed lots of people. That restaurant has big glass windows. Would have had a lot of flying shards of glass. Flying shards of glass kill an awful lot of people. It's a terrible thing. And they were happy to do it. They didn't think twice about it, and they keep trying. Right? Our blessing, I'm always reminded, see, I am fundamentally an optimist, even though I know that these bad things are going to happen. Moshe Dayan's greatest line for me was right after the Six-Day War, when a lot of people were saying, well, the IDF is the greatest fighting force in history because they won odds of 250,000 to 1 and defeated all these Arab armies and so on. So some journalists said, General Dayan, how good is the Israeli army? How does it compare with the great armies of history, with Caesar, with Alexander, with Patton, and so on? And Dayan said, nobody knows, we only fight Arabs. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, because our major enemies are people who screw up all the time. I mean, constantly, endlessly. I say, I'm at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. We have driven the sanctions movement, right? And we keep on pushing for harder sanctions and tougher sanctions. And every now and then I say to my colleagues, I say, great, sanctions, it's a good idea and it's a wonderful thing and we're succeeding and it's good for us and all of that. But, they're not necessary. Just leave the Iranians alone. They'll do it all by themselves. They'll wreck their whole economic system. It's like the Russians, right? You didn't have to sabotage the Soviet Union. The Soviets did it all by themselves. It was their greatest skill, right? Look at all the Russian jokes. What were all the Russian jokes about? Anyway, it was about a whole system that didn't work. You know those jokes, right? I mean, the greatest one, the one that Reagan famously told Gorbachev at one of these meetings, this guy gets up in the morning, his wife says, I just talked to so-and-so on the phone, they're selling lamb across town. So the poor man puts on all his clothes, goes down the subway, crosses town, goes to this place, there's big long lines, he picks one, he stands in it, hours go by, he gets to the front, he says, I'll have a kilo of lamb. Butcher says, we're out of lamb. Man says, I'll have a kilo of beef. The man says, we're out of beef too. Man says, I'll have a kilo of sausage. The man says, we're out of sausage. In fact, we're out of everything. Why don't you just go home and come back another day? And the man can't stand it. And he explodes, and he says, stupid system, accursed Marxism, Leninism, nothing works in this place. A guy in a trench coat steps out from behind the column and says, comrade, come with me. So the guy goes over. The man in the trench coat said, look, once upon a time, you'd have been shot for a little outburst like that. But now, things are different. Perestroika, glasnost. Go home, have a drink, be nice to your wife, calm down, don't do it again. So the guy goes down into the subway, back across town, walks in the front door. His wife says, did you get the lamb? The guy says, lamb? He says, there's no lamb in this country. Hell, they're even out of bullets. And there's jokes like that in Iran today. Right? I mean, that's what happens when, right? And they're terrible. I mean, they make a mess. I mean, those missiles, for example, that were in the video, they're not real. Those are photoshopped. One of them is real, and it's multiplied 5 times. And if you look carefully at it, you'll see that it's the same missile on the same trajectory every single time. Missiles aren't like that. Right? So they're inventing it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Michael, thank you very much. You've been speaking about Syria, and you've been talking about domestic policies here.
Yes.
What, when given an opportunity to talk to the good guys, the people that are rational and logical, fight the left, fight Islamofascism, what advice do you give them with regard to Syria? How do you find, or how should we find the good guys?
Look, there may not be good guys in Syria anymore. Or, there were good guys at the beginning. Certainly were. The original Free Syrian Army, FSA, the soldiers and officers who broke from the Ba'athist army, from Bashar's army, and went into opposition and started fighting against the regular army. They were good, and we should have rallied to them immediately. We didn't, in part because we didn't really know who they were. Added another one to our list of intelligence failures. We have infinite number of intelligence failures. But okay, so time has passed and radicals came pouring into Syria, and now Al-Qaeda's there and the Salafists are there and the Wahhabis are there and the Brotherhood is there. They're all there. And it's all true. And so if you just look at it this way and you say, well, how can we make things better in Syria? The answer is we probably can't. If you talk to our best intel people today and say, what's the best outcome in Syria? They will all say, there is no good outcome in Syria today. But they're wrong. Because an outcome in Syria that brings down Assad is a good outcome. Not for Syria, because you probably can't make things better in Syria right now. But it's great for us, because it gravely weakens and threatens Iran. And that's what I meant when I say you can't get at this by asking what's the best thing to do in Syria, what's the best thing to do in North Korea and so on. You've got to attack that whole thing. You have to find a way to bring that down. I have another thing that I want to say, because both the leftists and the Islamists are messianists. They all believe that the world as we know it is about to end, and a great Messiah or a great movement is about to transform the world in their favor. Listen to bin Laden. Bin Laden always used to say, we're winning because we're the right kind of Muslims. We practice Islam the way it's supposed to be practiced, and Allah blesses us by enabling us to win. And so we win, and so we defeat them. And so we had, you know, he always used to talk about, we had Somalia, and we had the Twin Towers, and we had the Khobar Towers, and all these, in the Marine barracks in Lebanon, and all these things. So what happens when they lose? There's nothing more vulnerable than a messianic movement when the Messiah fails. Because then you turn around and say to them, okay, when you won those things, you always said it was because Allah blessed you and enabled you to win. And now that you've lost, what happened? Did Allah change his mind? What did you suddenly do wrong? What are you now doing wrong so that you got driven out of Iran? Right? But we never did that. Nobody wanted to do that. And yet we are at war with these people. And we must drive home the point over and over and over again that they lose. And it's terribly important both for our people to understand that we win a lot, and for their followers, real and potential, to understand that they're losers. And you don't want to sign up with them. I mean, I love that uncle of the two Chechens in Boston. And some journalist said to him, well, you know, how do you explain these people? He said, they're losers. Right? They came here and they couldn't make it. They failed. And so they turned against it. Well, that's the world in microcosm. Because the people who hate us because we're successful. And they're failures. Look at the Muslim world. It's a terrible thing to say. The Muslim world is a colossal failure. And all it does is fail from one end to the other. The only thing they've really been able to master is pumping oil. But I mean, culture, great armies, military conquests, no, none of that. So, you know, they're great universities. They're starting to build impressive universities. They're all staffed with Westerners. In the history of the Nobel Prize, 4 Muslims have won Nobel Prizes in natural science. 3 of the 4 did all their work in the West. And 1 of the 4 was trained in England and went back to Egypt. But the others all went to MIT or Caltech and did their work there. They didn't do it in Cairo or Baghdad or Damascus. Right? Those are failed civilizations. Those are failed societies. And believe me, they all know it, because there's cable TV and internet now, and everybody knows. Everybody knows that Americans don't live the way they live. And they would rather live the way we live than the way they do live. And they know that there are failures. And that makes them very angry. Okay.
Michael, in 2009, when the rebellion was sort of happening in Iran, what would, if you had, if you were in the White House with Mr. Obama, what would you have suggested specifically that he do to keep that going?
Stand up and say that he was on the side of the demonstrators.
That's it?
Well, that's a big thing. And then make sure that and then said to his people, I want to support those people. I want to help them. What do they need? One thing is that, go talk to them. We haven't talked to them. No American official has talked to a leader of the Green opposition movement in Iran since before the elections of 2009. Talk to them. Ask them what they need. Basically, we brought down the Soviet Empire with Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, lots of speeches and political action from the President, the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of Defense, and all of that, and the fax machine. The fax machine was a great revolutionary weapon, because the fax machine enabled them to communicate with one another, whereas in the past they couldn't, in a way that the KGB wasn't prepared to deal with yet. We probably need to help these people, whether it's the Greens or whether it's the trade unions or whether it's this tribe or that tribe. They need to be better able to communicate with one another. So we're going to have to find a way to beat the kind of censorship that now goes on the internet, and the kinds of intercepts and so forth that now goes on with cell phones and so-called secure phones and so forth. There was a group that we know of that tested how good they are in Tehran about 6 months ago, I guess it was. So this group programmed several cell phones to send out text messages that the Revolutionary Guards would not like, okay, and put them in various locations around Tehran. On average, it took them 8 minutes to identify that that message had been sent and to locate the telephone. They're very good. So it will, we'll probably have to work on that. But anyway, back then, they didn't have this capability. And so back then, if we had given them secure satellite phones, it probably would have worked. But it's that kind of thing. It's not guns. Guns they have. I mean, you can get guns. Anybody can get guns there. Yes, sir.
You started answering my question just now. My question really has to do with the media blitz, not just with the president saying that we support the people.
Yes.
It's everywhere. In Syria and Egypt fell just because of the media. Can the United States not find a method in which it gets into all of these countries, to everybody, to show our support and to...
We're in all those countries. We broadcast to all those countries.
But
what we need is a Voice of America, or a Farda in the case of Iran, or there's some specialized ones. There's one to Cuba that's specialized and so on. That tells the people in these countries what they need to know, and not what these journalists. The funny people at Voice of America think they're at CBS or CNN. They don't think of themselves as working for the United States. They think they're just journalists, and they're supposed to provide balanced, unbiased, etc. coverage. And so they deliver highly critical news about the United States. They used to criticize Bush's State of the Union, for example, savaged it in Persian on our Farsi language broadcast. But anyway, what people in those countries need is not what occurs to us. what you want and what any normal person thinks of when they think, what do we want to broadcast to these people? You think we want to broadcast that the president loves them and we support them and we're for them and all of that. No. If the president says that, those people will know that. They don't need us to know that. What they need from us is information about their country, because that's what they don't know, because that's what their government keeps them from having, and that's what their government falsifies all the time. So, for example, in the Cold War, people in Moscow needed to know what was going on in Leningrad, and people in Leningrad needed to know what was going on in Vladivostok. And today, people in Tehran don't know what's going on in Isfahan or Tabriz or Shiraz. And when demonstrations are on, they know less than nothing. We need to tell them that. Those are things they need to know. We need to tell them about their own country and their own people, and they need to see that there's other people all over the country who are doing what they're doing, and there's lots of them, and they have plenty of support and so forth. They don't know that today, lots of them. Some of them do, but mostly they don't.
Thank you. I don't find myself being so fearful of North Korea or Iran or Hezbollah or Al-Qaeda. I find myself being terrorized by my own government. And I see within our own State Department, our Attorney General, our university systems, especially in California, our media, CBS, NBC, ABC, these people terrorize me, because if we can't trust our own government and the rest of the world looks at us and we abandon our allies in Iraq, Afghanistan, the danger is, it seems, that aspect of the war is, what about the war right within our boundaries and within our own government?
Yeah, I agree with all that, so we have to change that. We have to change, well, elect good government. We elect them, right? We just re-elected Obama. That has to change. We can't elect another Obama or somebody like him. It's fatal. And we have to strengthen conservatives in Congress. We have to try to take over the Senate. We have to try to stop him. School systems. Well, the school systems, listen, I've been saying this for 30 years. When Roger was talking about schools and all of that, my mother was a fourth grade teacher in Newark, New Jersey. And I will never forget that. And by the way, she never failed to teach a student to read. Every student she had learned to read from her. When Sesame Street first came on, right, it's worse than you think, because Big Bird and the Cookie Monster are our enemies. And I said to my mother after a few weeks of Sesame Street, I said, what do you think of Sesame Street? Isn't it cool? And she said, Sesame Street is a disaster. It teaches children all the wrong things about education. It teaches them that learning is fun, when it isn't fun. It's hard work and often painful. It teaches them that to learn in 6-minute sound bites. Right, because they get it 6 minutes at a time, and then it changes. And to learn, you have to learn to concentrate for long periods. And they learn that it's colorful, and it's musical, and it's none of those things. So everything that Sesame Street is really teaching children, now don't listen to the words, look at what happens, is wrong. And it's dangerous to them. And it's going to produce a generation of much less literate people, and it has. And it's become a model for things. And of course, we export horrible Sesame Street all over the world. And whenever some poor conservative comes along and says, why are we giving all this money to public broadcasting? And all the liberals stand up and say, you want to kill Big Bird? All right? You want to silence Cookie Monster? The answer is yes. We should want to silence them. And anyway, if it's so great, the private people will fund it for them. You don't need my money for that. Anyway, it's an ongoing battle. We have to fight every day. That's just the way it is. And maybe it's not fun, but, keep fighting.
When Roger introduced you, he was speaking about reaching out to people, to liberals.
Yeah.
And really, this is what my question is about, because that may be me with a lot of issues. Is it absolutely necessary to demonize everything that Obama does? Are we not alienating people who fundamentally agree that Islam does pose a threat? And yet, when the message comes out that Obamacare is the worst thing that's happened to America, that the effort to equalize the economic burden that it should be more, money should be spread around more equitably. It's not, it's not soaking the rich. Is it necessary also for this organization and the Horowitz Center to demonize LGBT people, many of whom are on board? That's my question.
Right, I'll answer it. I agree with you. It's not necessary to demonize Obama on everything. And there are times when Obama says things which I think are really terrific. And he says them well. I mean, what he said originally, his original response to Boston, I thought was just fine. But where he went off the tracks is when they reminded him that he must not talk about any international connections and he must not talk about radical. But, when they dragged him back on terrorism, and he started talking, he said, well, obviously anybody who kills people in the streets is a terrorist, and it's an act of terrorism. That was fine. All right, so yes, I am rooting for him. I'm not trying to kill him. I want him to change on an awful lot of things I care about. Where I demonize him are on these issues on which I think he's dead wrong. And many of them are issues on which I was highly critical of George W. Bush, because Bush was just as bad. And you will notice I said to you tonight that this terrible mistake about how to deal with Iran is not unique to Obama. It's true of every president, from Jimmy Carter to the present. Democrats, Republicans, lefties, righties, they've all gotten it wrong. And they've gotten it wrong every single time. So I'm not doing that, at least so far as I can tell. I'm not doing that. I'm perfectly happy to root for Obama to do the right thing. I'm not here to talk about Obamacare. We'll see how that works out. And these social issues, I'm probably closer to you than I am to some people who proclaim themselves to be conservatives. But what I care about, what I do, my day job, my work, I'm a military father. I had children that I was concerned were going to be blown up from one day to the next, and I didn't like having President first Bush and now Obama, who I thought were making a mess of things and increasing their jeopardy and making it more likely that they were going to be blown up, not less likely, and making it more difficult for them to win the wars in which they were engaged. And I'm not going to stop demonizing him for that, because he deserves it. And he gets more Americans killed every day. And that's just the way it is. It's not a...
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
But just as an aside, I'm sorry, but I'm gay. There's no problem with my being in this organization. Doris knows. David Horowitz knows I'm gay, and he has no problem with gays. As a matter of fact, we talk about the importance of conservatives reaching out to gay people. And as a matter of fact, I know Michael. I'm a trustee of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies because the founder of FDD told me, actually here in LA when he was making an appearance, how important it was to him that there be an outreach to the gay community to educate American gays about how viciously Islam has been treating gays. So I feel, I'm very, 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 very at home. I'm sorry, but I just had to set the record straight on that one. I'm sorry.
Gays,
question, I'm afraid it's a one-word answer. Obama administration came to power with certain assumptions about what would constitute the basis of a reset with Russia, that the Muslim Brotherhood was the golden path to Arab democracy, and somehow they were blessed with the penumbra and charisma and whatever to make it work with the Iranians. Given everything that's happened with Russia, the Muslim Brotherhood, and Iran, has anything even created an inkling that maybe in the administration that they need a plan B on any of this? Or do we get a one-word answer?
Kind of, sort of. There was an intense division within the administration over doing something in Syria. And Panetta and Hillary and Petraeus all wanted to do something in Syria. And Obama said no. I don't think Hagel and Harry what's his name? I always forget his name. Brennan wanted to do anything in Syria. But he may be compelled to do something in Syria even so. I mean, he can't stay out forever. It's impossible. On Iran, I don't see any sign that he's getting ready to do anything. I think he will resist that to the very end. I think that he thinks that intervention in Iran is the single worst thing that could happen. As you know, I'm against military intervention in Iran. We have tried at FTD, and we keep trying, and we will keep trying to convince them that there's a better way of doing it. That revolution and subversion work. And they're part of the great American tradition. We've done it over and over and over again, all over the world, and it works. So give it a try. I mean, I wrote it last week in the Wall Street Journal. So, you know, there's people willing to listen. Maybe with the passage of time, they'll try it. I think it'll work any time we try. I don't think that you have to wait for a certain magic moment. I don't think you need elections for it to work. I don't think you need demonstrations to have it work. I think the Iranian people are ready to go, and they keep looking to America. And whenever America stands up and say, okay, let's go, they'll go. That's what I think, but I'm an optimist.